The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Ski Sundown in nearby New Hartford, Connecticut. Groomed twice daily for optimal skiing conditions, both day and night. Ticket information available at skisundown.com. Winter made better.
Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte.
Later in the show, Mr. Universe Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Mead talks about the pros and cons of the confluence of astronomy and astrology when we hear about the parade of planets we'll see in our skies next week.
Plus a scientific explanation of how a planet is in retrograde.
But first, farming care.
Kale?
No, care like the bears, and a conference bringing folks together despite the New England winter with that concept at the heart of it.
We are at Prospect Meadow Farm in West Hatfield, where after this show is over, you can come and take a tour and learn about all of the incredible things that they do here in anticipation of what will happen on Tuesday and Wednesday, which is, I think, the first ever National Care Farming Conference happening at UMass.
My name's Esther, and I'm the site manager at Prospect Meadow Farm West.
My name's Natalie, and I am the program manager here at West.
My name's Allie LeClaire, and I'm the Director of Operations for Day and Vocational Services.
My name is Rafi Kurtz, and I'm the Senior Program Director for both East and West Farms.
My name's Sean Robinson. I'm Vice President of Vocational Services at ServiceNet.
So ServiceNet has a major imprint in what goes on here at Prospect Meadow Farm, which if you pull right off of 91 in West Hatfield, there's a beautiful little farm stand here. But what is the relationship between ServiceNet, which is a sort of multifaceted human service organization, and this farm?
So ServiceNet actually founded Prospect Meadow Farm about 13 years ago. Our CEO, our former CEO, Sue Stubbs, she had heard from a lot of folks who had previously been at the state hospital that the one fond part of their experience that they did recall often was the farming piece of that. And so she felt like there was a connection between farming and people with disabilities, that there was something they could get out of that experience. And so she hired me at that time to launch Prospect Meadow Farm. They are sort of our fiscal sponsor and lead organization.
How many years ago was that Prospect Meadow Farm was founded?
We were founded in 2011, so however many years that...
Oh, math. Do the math.
Yeah.
14 years for the people counting.
And we have some folks that have been here for 14 years as well, clients and staff.
Tell us a little bit about some of the folks.
Yeah, so we have a range of folks with a range of disabilities, some from intellectual disabilities to mental health. So we have folks with Down syndrome, autism, which is a spectrum. So you'll see folks that show up that have just different needs. And so you heard earlier, Rafi mentioned that we have East and West. And so we kind of have West is where we're at currently is set up so that folks can work more with the community, and East does a lot of animal care.
Oh.
And
Where is the East one?
it is just about 5 minutes around the corner,
Okay.
also in Hatfield.
Uh-huh.
And so our folks come here through DDS, Department of Developmental Services, and sometimes the school system. So we're set up to be a vocational program, and it is a great way for kiddos around the age of 16 that maybe are not going to qualify for a vocational system in the sense of somebody that's typically developing to come here and still get work skills and practice what it could be like to work in the community.
So it's kind of an integrated system across the board.
Yes.
Care farming. This is the first ever care farming conference that you, through ServiceNet, through Prospect Meadow Farm, has set up. It's going to happen at UMass on Tuesday and Wednesday. It's going to kind of kick off, though, here. Who wants to talk about what the idea is behind care farming?
So care farming is, like it said, so, we mentioned kind of the folks that we work with, which are typically intellectually delayed or have developmental delays. But care farming can be across the board individuals that need support. So there are care farms that work strictly with veterans. There are care farms that work strictly with mental health, and they even sometimes have housing. But the Care Farm Conference is national, so it is folks from all over the country. For the Care Farm Conference, we have farms that are coming from Texas, from Nevada, from California, North Carolina, etc. So it's kind of all over. And so it is kind of, the biggest deal is somehow Sean convinced everybody to come to New England in the wintertime.
A great farming location.
But I think that it's going to be really cool because it shows that even in harsher weather, we still are able to have folks feel successful and have chores for them to do.
I know I've seen the benefits that farming can do for people who don't have a lot of agency in their lives, and the self-confidence even I get from getting to put food in the ground, take it out. There's no more important work than create food. It's so special. And I've seen the ways that it's been able to help people of all different needs, people who are going to get some farming skills and move on to have, maybe a more typical career in the future, or people who are going to be here their whole lives, and all of them have such an important role in getting the food out into the community. And I'm really excited to be able to learn, what do farms look like in Texas? What do farms look like in Nevada? And what skills can they teach us to bring to our clients?
Has there been a sort of network of these types of farms before now? Like, are you actively talking to farms across the country about the systems that they're implementing, the way that they're planting, and like some of the things that they have in play?
So the conference is sort of the big launch of that network. So we had a small retreat about a year ago where I think it was about 20 leaders of care farms from around the country came together in the DC area, and we talked about what would it mean if we were able to connect with other farms like ours from around the country, share resources. Potentially, there's products that we produce that maybe they could sell in their farm store. Products they can produce, we can bring out here to Western Mass and sell in our farm store. And then when, our job coaches run into a unique situation with a farmhand, maybe that person requires a different type of assistive technology, a device that helps them complete a job, but we don't know what that might look like. Well, we can now reach out to folks in this network and say, hey, has anyone else dealt with this experience? Any recommendation? One of the first steps we took right after that initial retreat was creating a Google Drive where we could share the different assistive technology equipment that we use.
We're at Prospect Meadow Farm in West Hatfield, where after the show today, there will be a tour that is part of this first ever Care Farming Conference that'll happen on Tuesday and Wednesday at UMass Amherst with farms like Prospect Meadow, which is part of ServiceNet and helps people of varying abilities get their hands dirty, get in the ground, and benefit from what farming has to offer. Any particularly interesting types of farms that you heard about coming whose brains you're eager to pick that farm a specific type of product? Or
there's one farm, a flower farm from the Midwest. They do dried flower bouquets, and they've had a lot of success with those. And so we recently opened our third Prospect Meadow Farm location in Pittsfield, where we bought a former floral nursery. So now we have access to lots of flowers. And so to learn what they do with those dried bouquets is actually exciting, because that might be something that we can do. So we're excited about that opportunity to learn how they do that. And it'll be great also just for the folks at our Pittsfield location, because that's a new farm. So those are new job coaches who, they haven't had the benefit of being right here in Hatfield, where there's two Prospect Meadow farms. So this will be exciting for them to come out and meet other job coaches, to get excited about what Prospect Meadow Farm does and what other care farms do around the country, and bring that excitement back to Pittsfield and their new project as it develops. Because right now in Hatfield, we have about 90 plus farmhands, and in Pittsfield they've got about 12. But in the future, there'll be 40, 50. So this will help them envision what that future looks like.
The conference itself is happening at UMass, which has a robust agricultural department. What is your relationship with them as they're learning to become farmers of the future also?
We have several relationships. One, we do internships for college students, so not always necessarily UMass students, but Springfield College students, but also in the past some UMass agricultural students. Every year we host an agricultural class that comes, the full class, so that they can get exposed to care farming at Prospect Meadow.
Who is going to be speaking at this conference that people can come and check out and hear from? I see you've got the agenda right there.
I know Natalie's one of the speakers.
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
I am one of the speakers. Yeah, so I will be speaking on de-escalation and emotional regulation. So I will be speaking on the social work aspect of the care parts of farming.
And then there's also going to be sessions about emotional regulation, residential living on care farms. So it should be very exciting.
What are the things that get grown here at Prospect Meadow Farm?
I'll go into shiitake mushrooms because that is one big thing that is very special about us. We are one of the largest growers of shiitake mushrooms in the western state of Massachusetts. We, on a good day in the summer, can get upwards combined of the east and west farms around 150 pounds of mushrooms in one day.
Whoa.
Yes, it's pretty significant.
Holy shiitake.
Hey, you got it.
And they're log raised, which is what makes them unique. Largest grower of log raised shiitakes, actually in the Northeast region even. So we're real excited about that. That's our biggest product. That and farm fresh eggs. Yeah. We've got over 500 chicks chickens. And Esther works in the field a lot, so she could tell you about a lot of what we grow.
Yeah, we get to do a big variety of vegetables, which is really fun for me. We do peppers, spicy ones. We have a bunch of different varieties of tomatoes. We do lots of different cooking greens, lots of lettuces. I know our CSA patrons are excited because we get to offer them a pretty wide variety. We also grow a ton of herbs and a few rows of flowers every year. Members of the CSA get to come and pick their own flowers and do their own floral arrangements. In the summer, one of my favorite things to do is get farmhands together and put together flower arrangements to bring to the farmers market. And I know they're a fan favorite.
Nice. We also grow a lot of vegetables for local seniors. I don't know, and we've expanded that this last year. I don't know if you want to speak to the senior centers we work with?
Yeah, so we worked with the Greenfield Senior Center through the CISA Senior Farm Share Program, and we also work with Williamsburg and Hatfield as well. And we're hoping to grow that next year.
Yeah, so seniors are able to get access. This is a great CISA program that we were able to be involved in. Access to farm share, I think it's for $10 for the season. And through funding that CISA is able to raise, they pay us our full amount, but the seniors get access to that, and then we deliver directly to the senior centers. It's an incredible program that we love being part of.
Rafi, you seem like the strong silent type. What is it that you do here? Tell us a little bit about what drives you to be part of what Prospect Meadow and ServiceNet is doing here in West Hatfield.
I think my strength really comes with connecting with people, not only the staff, but all our individuals. I mean, a huge part of the care farming model is community. Just getting the guys together to be able to talk with each other, work with one another, problem solve with each other, gives them a real sense of purpose, not only here, but when they go home. And to be honest, a lot of people in the system don't have a lot of access to meet people and branch out and create relationships, whether they're platonic or romantic. So we're here to kind of support them, giving them all the skills, not only to farm, but emotional skills.
I have a constant running list of comments that you hear, and some of them are sweet and some of them are quirky. And so
I want both.
But it's really fun because it's heartwarming, and it shows how being here and watching folks be able to grow in ways that maybe they were told they couldn't or didn't have the capacity to. And, we've seen folks that have worked at the farm and have gone on to work in the community and have been successful with that. And we're always a great home base, whereas if they try that and maybe it wasn't a success, then they can come back and say, I think that I need a little more stability here, and this is what I want to work on next. And so that's the greatest thing about the farm. It's a very wholesome place to be because you just get to see their growth, but you also get humor and compassion, and it's a family. It really has built into how folks have grown together.
When I was a girl,
Coming up, we'll meet the people and the animals benefiting from the concept of care farming at Prospect Meadow Farm in Hatfield.
And later, our resident astronomer gets a little astrological as Salman Hamid talks about planetary alignment and its implications.
For science, you're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by UMass Amherst School of Public Policy, offering graduate programs in public affairs, public policy and administration, data analytics, and computational social science. umass.edu/SPP. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Window World of Western Mass, a local family business with experienced craftsmen offering skylights, siding, gutters, and doors. windowworldofwesternma.com.
I have a little anecdote. I hope that this is the right amount of PG-13.
Bring it on.
But
We already talked about shiitake mushrooms and logs.
there was... I won't get too into anything that's too intense, but a few weeks ago, two farmhands who sometimes can be good friends and sometimes can get very, very angry with each other. One of them was having just a really down day. He really struggles with his mental health and was expressing some scary thoughts and some scary impulses. And another client was worried about him and kind of tried to interject with something he thought would be helpful that did not end up being especially helpful to the person, and resulted in that person really blowing up on him. And so I kind of sat with him for a while. We talked through the conversation, talked through his anxieties, kind of tried to help him not be scared about this person's safety safety, but also talk through options when someone is saying something scary and you're their friend. Like, what can you choose to say? And he was just, this is someone who I think often really brushes off relationships, and it was just this really sweet moment of him really earnestly working his hardest through the way he processes to be there for someone that he cares about. And it was a pretty intense conversation, maybe 45 minutes. I felt like we had touched on a lot of important topics, and I was getting ready to kind of wrap up the conversation. I said, I think it's time I go check in with this other person. Is there anything else on your mind? And we were sitting down in the grass, and he put his head in his hands and kind of shook his head and said, I just, Esther, I don't know what's going on with your hair. And he keeps me humble. Each conversation has it all.
I notice you're wearing a hat today.
I will not be showing you my hair.
We're at Prospect Meadow Farm in West Hatfield, where after the show today, there will be a tour that is part of this first ever Care Farming Conference that'll happen on Tuesday and Wednesday at UMass Amherst with farms like Prospect Meadow, which is part of ServiceNet and helps people of varying abilities get their hands dirty, get in the ground, and benefit from what farming has to offer.
Yeah, I have another example I can share as well, and I think it really illustrates what care farming is all about. So there was an individual with us several years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago. At the time, this young woman was turning, 21, ended up pregnant, ultimately decided to leave the farm. I'd see her here and there, but a couple of months ago, I started seeing her outside of Stop and Shop, where folks are asking for money sort of on, as you're driving out. And that touched my heart, seeing her there, because I knew she was a great worker when she was with us. So it was sad to see her in that position. And I stopped and spoke to her, found out she was living, in a tent in the woods, homeless, really needing to ask people for money. And I asked her, well, you used to get services from the state. Have you reached out to anyone? Well, next time I come and talk to her, she says, I actually followed up. I called the state. I'm waiting for a call back. They got her message. They called her back. And last week she started working back at the farm.
Awesome.
So she's able to, we provide lunch here too. So she's able to now get a good meal every day, start making a paycheck, and hopefully begin rebuilding her life. So that's what care farming is all about.
Now show us your digs.
We want to see Prospect Meadow West in West Hatfield here. They're going to host the first part of the Care Farming Conference later this afternoon, and then 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, at UMass. We've left the warmth of the space heater in the office into the cold of the barn.
In the room where the reception will be.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey, buddy. Hey, man. Good to see you. What are you working on?
Well, I was sleeping. I'm just taking a quick break, but I was sleeping in the barn. I know winter activities aren't the funnest, but I still love my job, and I still like being here, and I love and there's nothing else I want to do than be here.
That's so great.
Hey, Justin, is there anything that you like to do in the summer that's your favorite?
Weeding and working with animals, and planting and weeding, and yeah, I'm a master weeder.
I love it.
Every farm needs one.
The living weed whacker. Good to see you, buddy.
Nice to see you. I know Monty Belmonte.
He does.
Yeah, I met him a few times.
Yeah.
Jen can tell us about the animals while we walk down there.
She's going to help give us a little tour of the animals.
Are you going to give us a tour of the animals, Jan?
Yes.
What are you taking us to see?
The goats, the chickens, and the rabbits.
Love it. Now we're outside.
The rabbits.
Do the rabbits have names, Jan?
Yeah, Ginger and Snap.
Ginger snaps. I love those.
Yeah.
What kind of rabbits are those?
The Giants one.
Yeah, they are giant.
Flemish giants. They're big because traditionally people eat them, but we just cuddle with them.
But they don't love to be cuddled with. They're much more petting.
I bet they love it more than being eaten.
To give everybody a size idea, they're about the size of a 25-pound cat.
Like bulldog size.
Yeah.
Coming up on our chickens.
Yeah. Do you work with the chickens and the animals?
Yes, I do.
What do you do?
We clean out the coop and stuff, and we get them fresh water, fresh food.
You collect the eggs?
Yes, we do.
How many eggs do you usually get?
A lot.
Good, because eggs are a hot commodity right now.
And the animals, I think, really provide a therapeutic aspect to our farmhands. Getting to work and take care of another life is a pretty important thing.
We grow vegetables and stuff.
Do you like working better with the vegetables or with the animals?
The animals.
We have an escapee.
An escaped chicken?
Yeah.
Oh, How did you get out? Esther has commandeered chicken. Get back in there, chicken. Go to your home. Do the chickens have large talons?
Do the chickens have large talons? Do they have what? Large talons. I don't understand a word you just said.
Yes.
I think that every time I see chickens, yeah.
One thing I like to do with the chickens in the summer, it turns out if you make a perfect environment for shiitake mushrooms, you also make a perfect environment for the slugs that eat shiitake mushrooms.
Right.
So every morning in the summer, we get to get a bottle from recycling, fill her up with slugs, and then the chickens get to have a great snack.
Wow.
Yeah. Our ongoing saying is, good day to be a chicken, bad day to be a grub. Jen, you want to take us to the goats?
Where we're going to the goats are, we're like 20 yards away from 91. So you can hear the traffic right there. And all
Both
that.
are already curious about us.
They are.
It has happened before that someone driving up 91 in the morning has been able to tell us that the goats are out.
How'd you get out, goat?
They're goats.
They're sneaky. They're smart. So, Jen, would you like to tell us what is special about our goats for this season? What have we recently done with the goats?
We're gonna have babies.
Yeah. When are they going to happen?
They should be in May.
Yeah.
So these 4 are all female, and you rent a male. So
That's the life.
That's the life.
We found out about that at the cattle farm.
Yeah. So our rented male actually left us this morning, and so these are our 4 goats. Jen, would you like to give their names?
Junebug, Pickle, and Dale. And I don't know the one.
Yes, Tyra.
Tyra Banks.
When she was a baby, she had really long, graceful legs. So that's how she became.
Oh, nice.
Tiffany, I'm extremely disappointed in you.
Quite the beaut.
Yeah. All 4 of them look pretty relaxed. They must have had a busy morning.
Good old Ricky James at it again. That was our Billy Goat's name.
Rick, your Billy Goat's name is Rick James?
That girl is pretty kinky. Girls are super freak.
That was his name. He was rented. We didn't get to make that one.
Opportunity for you to
my
put
God.
it has to be give it to me, baby.
Okay.
Give it to me, baby. Give it to me.
I was going to use
When
something
you
from the
use
Chappelle show. I'm Rick James.
Yeah, our goats are very, very sweet since we did have them. They're Nubian goats, and so we had them since they could fit in your lap.
When they were brand new.
When they were, yeah.
Hey, baby, your hips is getting big.
They have such cuddle and like such passion. They're very easy to get along with. You can go and stand in there. They might headbutt a little, but it's not to.
They are goats after all.
They are goats, yeah.
And Nubians have great temperament, and they produce a lot of milk.
Yes, that's one thing we're not sure we're gonna dive into. It's a little bit harder of a chore that I'm not sure we are at the capacity to take on right now. But since they are going to be having babies, it is something we might experiment with.
Maybe you'll learn something at the Care Farming Conference about milking goats at a care farm.
I know we have a culinary program, and we've been talking about the culinary program learning how to make the goat cheese.
Yeah, that's
which
awesome.
would be pretty cool.
There were some mentions about adaptive farming and some of the tools that get used for that. What are some of the adaptive practices that you're using here, or are you?
I don't think that we have adaptive tools specifically. So our farmer who uses a lot of, if you guys can see here, a lot of the farming tools, he does that as a one-man job. Yes, yeah, he takes on quite the capacity. And so I think the adaptive parts of what we do are the accessibility of the farm.
Our farmer does the stuff that we need to do with the big machinery, but compared to most farms, especially in the area, we're very low tech. We do a lot of stuff by hand, which gives us the opportunity to really tailor stuff to individuals. Like, I know when we're planting, we often get a whole assembly line. Some folks might have a real hard time with the fine motor skill of like carefully planting and packing in dirt. So, but they might be totally fine at watering, so we'll have them come behind. There might be some people who getting on their knees is more challenging for them, or being on the ground isn't as comfortable, so they get to pull all of the sprouts out of the starter things and put them in each hole. And it really creates an ability for everyone to get their hands dirty and be a part of the process, even if each individual task might not be something that they could complete.
So is this shiitake mushroom land?
This is shiitake mushroom land.
It's awesome. So there are these regular wooden pallets that you'd be used to, but then logs stacked like
Lincoln log
style, yeah. And And
Jenga style.
Jenga, right. Well, like if you're going to make a campfire, the lazy way is the way I like to think of it.
It's the way that works.
It does work best. It's not top.
Some of us need help.
Like
We have about a 700 log yard going.
Wow.
Each stack that you see is 50.
50
It's
logs.
50 logs.
And then and you were saying that on a given day in the right conditions, you'll get how many again?
Of just this site on a good day in the summer, we can get 90 pounds.
That's amazing.
We get to do the process all the way from cutting down small trees and piecing them out into boughs, doing the whole inoculation process. So farmhands are able to drill holes, fill them with spawn, wax them. It takes about a year for spawn to kind of take hold of the mushroom. And then after a year, they will produce mushrooms for us for, depending on the type of wood and depending on the size, up to 7 years each log.
That's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah. As Esther said, here we get about 90 pounds on a good day. And so across both sites, it's about 150. But we don't sell them that quickly. So we actually will end up dehydrating them. And so that's what we get to sell in through the winter months.
We also have clients who's they have a ton of self-starting energy and will call different restaurants when we have an especially big flush, see who we can send bulk orders to. And clients are able to like experience all sides of that process and get real business skills, which is really, really cool.
What are some differences between running west and east? How are they different from each other?
The differences, I would say, are with our farmhands, the clientele that we have, and what their capacity is. And so this site here at West is the one that works a lot more with the community. And the other site has folks that maybe are not quite as prepared for that. And there's also some safety concerns. So like somebody that maybe has a tendency to walk off or something like that, we're right beside the road. If there's somebody that has that safety concern, then East is probably a better fit for them because there's a stretch, there's a whole driveway that we can maybe keep somebody safer.
East is a little bit quieter and a little bit more isolated just in terms of the layout. So some people, even like the traffic noise here might be too much for them. And some people are really excited to be here and get the opportunity to work in the farm store, hand out CSA, and that's like a real driving force for them. And that might be why they're here.
One other difference between the two sites is East has a commercial kitchen, which we recently were able to put in through a grant. So anyone interested in culinary arts training would likely be placed at that site.
Oh, that's cool too. Anything in particular excited to learn about at this conference that you at Prospect Meadow and ServiceNet are hosting for the whole country Tuesday and Wednesday at UMass?
I saw that there's a section on hydroponics and growing stuff in the greenhouse, which I'm super excited to learn about.
I think for me, it's going to be a lot of the networking and getting to like know what other folks are doing and know how they're doing their work, because obviously I understand how we function, how we run, and being in Massachusetts with DDS, would that look in other parts of the country?
Yeah, there's going to be a great talk on residential programs and communities on care farms, which I'm really excited for, because that's something that we've heard from families. It's a need that's really hasn't been met yet, so I'm excited to learn more about that.
The concept is amazing. I love the idea that, somebody stumbled upon this, that this could be such a gratifying way to work with people of all abilities and people with all abilities working together.
You can take your own tour of Prospect Meadow Farm West in Hatfield right after our show today, like today, from 4 to 6 p.m.
And you can find out more about the conference they've organized by going to carefarmingnetwork.org.
And Prospect Meadow Farm's parent organization, ServiceNet, is an underwriter of any PM, but that's not why we went. This is a really cool concept. Up next, our astronomer turns astrologer, sort of, and celebrates the planetary alignment in our skies, plus explains what really makes a planet go retrograde.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass 5 College Credit Union, offering co-op advantage checking with cash back on all purchases, plus secure debit card controls, all from the UMass 5 mobile banking app. Insured by NCUA, umass5.coop. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar, homegrown in Hatfield, Massachusetts, and providing energy savings for their customers for over 10 years. Learn more at northeast-solar.com.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
Time for some more kitchen table astrology with Hampshire College astrologer Dr. Salman. Oh, no. Don't confuse astrology and astronomy. And that is a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. the differences between astrology and astronomy, because something astronomically interesting is happening in the next week or so that is also very interesting to astrology people. But before we do that, Kainat Studios, which you run, Dr. Salman Hamid, Mr. Universe, you are now officially the Carl Sagan of Pakistan, right? Because isn't Kainat Kids going to be included in all the public schools of Pakistan?
Thank you. Well, yes. So Kainat Kids, we have recently signed a memorandum of understanding with the federal government to include clips from our kids series that will be included in the public schools. And so, yes, so that's an ongoing process. Right now, our content is in Urdu, which is spoken in Pakistan. It is also adaptable in India as well.
Because Hindi and Urdu are very similar, right?
Spoken language can be similar. But this year, in 2025, our kids series is also going to be in English. And we are in conversations with other countries as well, where this actually content can also be included in other school systems, or it could be on, of course, it's available on YouTube. But stay tuned. I will let you know once the English content is out, because, of course, that will be relevant to much bigger population.
I love it, especially because I know how influential Carl Sagan's Cosmos was to you as a young person. Now come full circle to the people of your home nation, Pakistan. You're that person now, in their own language, telling them these things that are so fascinating to you and to me and to the universe. Back to cosmology and astrology. There is a lot of excitement about something that's happening in the sky on January 25th, I believe, right?
Well, so there are a few things that are happening. One of them is actually tonight, Monday night, and that is you have full moon, which is very interesting. No,
that's
full
when
moon
I turned into a werewolf.
That's right. But you also have these days Mars, which is quite bright in the night sky.
So is that the one that we see close to the moon right now?
Yes.
Okay, because I always think it's Venus, but it's not always Venus.
Well, although the moon moves with respect to the planets every day and with respect to the stars, but tonight actually there's going to be a lunar occultation. And what that means is...
the moon is getting an eye test.
That's right.
We're going to cover the left eye and look through the hole with the right.
But what it means is that it's going to actually come in front of Mars. In certain locations, you'll be able to see that. In other places, it's just going to be very close to Mars. But in other places, especially in North America, for example, it's going to, in fact, cover up Mars, and then Mars, you will see Mars from the other side, and it's going to happen around 9:21.
So we'll see what looks like a star but is actually a planet, and then the moon will move in front of it and block it out for a little bit.
That is correct. Yeah. And usually it's really cool because you can actually learn a lot about the features of the moon. So these type of things happen a lot. One planet can come in front of a star as well, planetary occultation that happens. And because background objects are like point-like, you can actually learn a lot about the object in front. So in this case, for example, if you want to learn more about the moon, you can, because you have this point-like source behind it, and you can actually see features really highlighted when it goes behind the moon. And so that is happening today, but that is not the only thing. Right now, in the evening sky, you have a parade of planets. So you have Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, all available and for your convenience in the evening sky and not in the early morning sky. You usually say, oh yeah, you have to get up at 4 a.m. and you see them. No!
When I did a morning show, that was great. Now that I don't, the evening sky, I much preferred, even late nights.
Venus and Saturn right now are wonderfully visible towards the western skies after sunset.
So if you care to find me, look to the western sky. It's from Wicked. It's from Wicked. Okay. I had to throw it in there. I'm holding space for Venus and the other planets.
Venus is the brightest object other than the sun and the moon. And so that is there. And then, although Saturn is not that bright right now, but then you can also find Jupiter high up in the sky. And of course, Mars, which actually just recently went through the closest distance between the Earth and Mars. So it was actually relatively close by, so it's very bright right now.
And that's the one that will be eclipsed by the moon tonight.
That's exactly right. So you have all of these planets available, and one thing you will notice, that they almost form a line in the sky, and that is kind of cool. And that tells you that, hey, all of these planets are in a disc-like shape, sort of like it's called an ecliptic. All the planets are orbiting around the sun in this line. And this is the line that you see. And in fact, you can extend it if you try to do that from where the sun set. And you just make an arc around it, and you're going to see sort of like all of these planets roughly aligned with that line, which is called the ecliptic.
So the ecliptic is like a disk, kind of like the rings of Saturn. So Saturn's rings aren't solid objects. It's a bunch of stuff orbiting Saturn, ice and things, that make it look like this disc shape. Same thing with the planets orbiting the sun. We're in this disc around the sun.
This is where one of the big questions was, if you want to understand how our solar system formed, we have to explain why all of these planets are, for example, in this one plane.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, of course, there are other questions why they are moving in the same direction and rotating in the same direction as well.
Right.
There are exceptions, but in general, they do that. And all of this stuff gets explained by our theory of the formation of the solar system, which says that we were part of a big nebula, our sun formed from it, and it was rotating as it collapsed into our sun. Along with the material around it, it collapsed into a disk. And out of that disk, you have these planets formed out of that. And because the disk material was moving in a certain way, as you would imagine all of that material to be spiraling or spinning in one direction, this is exactly how the planets formed and how the planets are rotating.
And why they're in the same plane. I think of this isn't a perfect analogy, but if you're on a pottery wheel, you get a big chunk of clay and it's spinning, 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 and you push on it, it eventually turns into a disc.
Oh, my love.
So it's a conservation of angular momentum. And so this is the direction, which is the least opposing direction. So there is no preferable direction in space. But when you are rotating, there is a one particular direction where it's going to be less resistance, and this is the direction how it's going to collapse in.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how planets form, and that's the reason you find planets more or less in an ecliptic or in a plane, and that happens everywhere. So most solar systems, almost all of the solar systems we see, in general, we see them in those lines because that is how planets form around stars.
So people that love astrology are really psyched about this alignment of the planets. It is something that doesn't happen frequently, right? Wasn't it like a very thousands, if not more, years ago that it was aligned like this? Or am I wrong about that?
You are absolutely wrong about that.
The TikTok videos and things that I see that are saying how big a deal this is.
No.
Not that big a deal.
No, this happens actually relatively frequently, but this is nothing. And remember, just because you see them line up in our sky doesn't mean they are actually close together.
Right.
So, for example, Saturn and Venus that you see in the night sky, they are going to come close and close together. They're going to be very close, in fact, in the evening of January 17th and 18th. They're going to almost, you would look like they're almost kissing each other.
Mm-hmm.
They're very close, but it is because the way we are looking into the sky, in actuality, Mars is much closer to us compared to Saturn. Mm-hmm. So it's just to us, it looks like they are close, and there are no impact on us. There is nothing that impacts on it because if you think about, is it gravity that is impacting us? No, because they are quite far away. Monty, your gravity is impacting me more than the moon or even these objects that are far, far, far away.
Well, thank you.
Exactly. And
I didn't know it had that kind of effect on you, Salman.
Well, so that is one of the things, that it's a beautiful show and we should appreciate it. I actually find it really incredible. I think I've mentioned this before because we also talk on Mondays and that's when the trash pickup is. And on Sunday night, I take out trash, and I always love taking out trash because you get to look up in the sky. And it's very cold usually. Yeah. So what I mean to say is normally I would love to go out every night and look at it, but it's too cold, so I don't. But because I have to take trash out, I'm forced to. But I look up in the sky, and when you're looking at the stars, most of these stars, the light is coming from tens of light years, if not hundreds of light years away, or maybe a few thousand light years away. And so that's what you are looking at. But even with planets. So last night when I was out, I could see Mars, I could see Venus, and I'm like, it's really cool. And then I saw Saturn close to Venus, and I'm like, well, you are looking at the depth, even though your brain is telling you that it's just in our sky and they are really together. But knowing that Saturn is actually much farther away than Mars, you can almost visualize depth in the sky. And the same thing you can do right now. Apart from these planets, you have Orion, the constellation of Orion, which is the most beautiful and prominent constellation in the sky. You can look at it, and the knife of Orion, the hunter, so there is a belt underneath the knife. That's where Orion Nebula lies, about 1,500 light years away, where actually a lot of baby stars are forming. So we were talking about formation of planets. That's the place where it's happening. So you can actually look at, with the naked eye, you don't see the nebula, but you can actually look at it and you can imagine seeing this depth in the sky. You can see Betelgeuse.
I'm the ghost with the most, babe.
The star that is really on the shoulder of Orion. And you also know that, well, this is actually not the same distance as Mars or Saturn. This is actually hundreds of light years away.
So we're looking at this thing on a two-dimensional, what looks like a two-dimensional piece of black paper. But in reality, it is so vastly distant between not only all of those stars and the nebula in these constellations that we have projected to be two-dimensional, but even our own planets in our own solar system. They are not really in a line. They are very, very far away from each other.
And knowing that is beautiful.
Coming up, more with Dr. Salman Hamid on the astronomical and astrological phenomenon appearing in our skies next week and on what it really means when a planet goes retrograde.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. More with astronomer Salman Hamid on the astrology implications of next week's planetary alignments.
It comes back to the astrology part, and I get why people historically have wanted to ascribe power to stars, and it makes sense because your life, there are a lot of uncertainties in life. Life is hard. And so you want to gain any kind of control over it. And one of the ways to control it was maybe these objects in the sky, the way they look like a hunter, a lion, or whatever. And these are the shapes that our brains are designed to detect. We find shapes everywhere, including clouds, including tea leaves or stars and everything. But then why are those shapes there? So we ascribe those meanings to it, and then we try to figure out whether we can explain what is happening on Earth, because we of course think we are the most important things in the universe, so if they are out there, it must be because of us. And so if the way they are moving, they must be telling something about us. But in reality, no, they are doing their own thing. It really has nothing to do with us. And of course, this is all appearance of the shapes and things like that. Historically, astrology has been important, and even today, people, can ascribe things to it, but in reality, there is beauty in knowing about these depths in skies and how it moves, and we have to sort out our own problems. It's not the stars that are going to tell us anything. Even for astrology, it used to actually tell us a lot more things. For example, there used to be horoscopes for cities, where London had a horoscope, Baghdad had a horoscope. There were horoscopes of cities because they could actually tell, first of all, weather forecast for the whole year, because we didn't know about the weather. How do you figure out? How do you get a control over it? Well, stars must be telling us. And
now we know it's Dave Hayes, the weather nut.
That's exactly right.
Monty, I'm very sorry. Please don't hurt me.
And you had forecasts for fires, predictions for fires, because fires were uncertain. There was a horoscope for fires. Today we don't have that. But we still have humans that are much more complicated, and there are uncertainties about that. So we say, it must be those stars. They're not telling us about the fires anymore. And by the way, since we are mentioning fires, LA fires, that's crazy, and it's terrible tragedy. So I don't want to make light of that aspect, because that is also, in some sense, climate change has been a big part of that. So today, the uncertainties lies in human relations, and so we ascribe those explanations or look for those explanations up in the sky for that.
When you were Googling about this alignment of planets that will be happening, that's starting to happen right now, but I think the 25th of January is supposedly the highlight of it all. Even you, an astronomer, were force-fed by Google some astrology.
It was interesting. It came up when I was looking for it, the Google AI, which I didn't ask for it, but it gave me the the first estimate, and it gave me scientific information about planetary alignment, and that was great. I was like, oh, okay, it's because I just wanted to check specific dates and things like that. Although I do avoid AI. I don't go to click on AI. I go to NASA websites or others, but it was just up there. I was like, oh, so what else is it telling me? And it was interesting that rest of the stuff, so the prompts that it gave was like, what is planetary alignment? And it says, well, here are these planets that are going to appear in the sky like that. So that was correct information. But then it also says what it means. And I was like, oh. And it said underneath, without me asking it, that it is a time of self-reflection and self-evaluation. And for a minute, I was like, is it AI talking to itself, where it should be self-reflection and self-evaluation, or is it telling me? But anyway, that's besides the point, but that's what it tells me. And then it says how it impacts you. It said that it can impact your motivation, anger, sex drive, and passion. It can also cause you to feel on edge, triggered, or overly sensitive, which I am right now, because this is the problem with AI, for example, where you are mixing in scientific information with astrological information, and there are no flags, for example. There is no distinction in there. And in this age of misinformation, this is going to be a bigger and bigger problem, because people are just going to look for it. Hey, I'm just going to Google it. And so as a teacher and as an astronomer, as a scientist, we are worried about how to talk about accuracy in science, because that is crucial. As Carl Sagan said, that we have designed our world around science and technology, and yet we have an education system which basically leads you to ignorance, or leads you not to understand what science is. And that is what he called a recipe for disaster. So we have spent a lot of time thinking about how do you differentiate between good information versus bad information. And to me, this particular thing was deeply problematic, because here there was some information that was scientifically accurate, but within it, next of the questions actually led you towards astrology. Now, this is relatively benign, but this is a good example where you are being fed misinformation in a much more subtle way, where you won't even care that you are being fed misinformation. And this is how it can get absorbed by you, because you were just looking at information about what is happening, what is up in the night sky, and you were also given, what does planetary alignment means? It means that it can lead you to issues with motivation, anger, and so on and so forth, which it has nothing to do with actual planetary alignment. But now, through osmosis, AI osmosis, you think, oh, it does have some impact. I read somewhere, because you did.
Yeah.
Right? So I think this is an example where how we have to be really careful about it, and why this is such a problem. I did not ask for AI to give me information. It did. And it had a mixture of accurate and inaccurate information. This is on something that is not crucial, but I think over the period of time, we are going to be in a lot of trouble in figuring out what is real and what is not, and what the information that we get fed.
What is real is that you will have a beautiful display in the sky of our planets in our solar system, a better understanding of how they are all in one platter-type plane, and then you'll ask the question, if it's got Venus there, if it's got Mars, if it's got Saturn, where's Uranus?
Actually, it is invisible, but you will need a telescope for Uranus. I should also mention one other cool thing right now, and this also connects in some sense to astrology and astronomy. Mars is in retrograde right now. And for astrologers, it goes like, oh my goodness. In fact, I think from December to February, Mars is what we call in retrograde motion. And what that means is that when we look at Mars, it moves, planets move with respect to the background stars. And planet means wanderers, because they wander with respect to the background stars, which we consider them as fixed, although we know they also move. But in our sky, they don't appear to move on a shorter time frame. But planets like Mars, like Mercury and others, they'll be moving with respect to background star in one direction, and then over a period of time, it looks like that it is stopping and then moving in the opposite direction before resuming this direction. And it takes a couple of months. And this was a big puzzle. And for history of science perspective, that's why, all of this stuff is really cool. Forget about the astrology part. The actual part is really cool. This was a big question. What kind of model can explain the planets moving around and this weird retrograde motion? And so when you had, for thousands of years, Earth at the center of the universe and everything moving around us, this was a huge puzzle. And they had to really figure out, how do we explain these retrograde motions, and in particular of Mars, which was so obvious. And so they came up with, for example, you might have heard of it, epicycles. So meaning to say that it's not that the Mars is just orbiting around the Earth. Mars is actually on another epicycle or another circle which is orbiting around the Earth. And all of that was meant to explain this retrograde motion. And then, of course, as our observations improved, we had to keep on adding more and more epicycles to it to explain the observations. And ultimately, it turns out it's much simpler to explain this retrograde motion if the sun is at the center and Earth and Mars are both orbiting. And what happens here is that because the Earth is a little bit closer to the sun and it's moving faster than Mars, so in its orbit, it overtakes Mars. And just like a car that happens, like, that once you are approaching it, as it appears to go slower and slower, stop, and move backward. Mm-hmm. This is what happens. And so the retrograde motion was explained much more simply and beautifully with the sun being at the center of the universe. So retrograde motion, Mars's retrograde motion, for example, is beautiful and it is important in history of science. So really cool.
On the next Fabulous 413, our favorite friendly neighborhood symphony has a real treat up its sleeves because this Saturday is its annual MLK Day concert.
So we speak with conductor Jerry Lynn Johnson about originating the idea for the program and with soloist Melissa White about making her violin sing with their melodies.
We'll hear from each of them in their own words the impact of diversifying the symphonic and chamber music playing field, and from the symphony's own Heather Casey Roberts about bringing new musical world to Springfield.
We leave you with Sam Moore, the surviving partner of Sam and Dave, whose death was announced over the weekend. He passed away at age 89, half of the dynamic duo, the double dynamo, the Sultans of Sweat. Sam and Dave passed
Until they
away.
started fighting, but that's a whole other
Yeah, they
story.
broke up a long time ago, but their music is so good.
It's so good.
I'm Monty Belmonte.
I'm Khalees Smith. Hold on, we're coming to the next Fabulous 413
We'll see you tomorrow.